Sadaf is a chef and author known for documenting India's culinary traditions. A finalist on MasterChef India 2016, he hosts pop ups and co hosts the podcast Naan Curry. His book, Masala Mandi, explores regional spice cultures, and he also writes children's book that blend storytelling and learning about food. Please join me in welcoming Sadaf Hussain on the stage.
Hello. Sorry, I'm just going to. Huh. All right. Little correction of me cooking and all that jazz. You can ask me any silly question. Feel free, please. These days, a lot of times people ask me, "How was the show?" 10 years has been. 10 years, and I will most have forgotten almost everything about it. Um, we're not going to be cooking anything here, unfortunately. Um, why, you may ask? Because it's a wooden space and you don't want to burn the kitchen or the space. That's the only reason. Um, so, no food cooking or recipe sharing unless post we meet post our lecture conversation. Um, we're talking about food from a very different perspective of what is history, what is geography, and then the last question itself from the identity perspective. Um, you've had your food. If you had your food, give a shout. Yeah, that doesn't sound like a shout. Yes. Okay. The shout is like, if have you had your food? Yes. Only that. You guys didn't eat the food or what? Coupon नहीं मिला आज का. How do these guys get the food? That simple. कुछ treasure hunt होगा. Yeah. So if you had your food already, then some energy that I would need. I haven't had food. That's what I'm saying. Blame it to her. Yeah, of course. Somebody has to blame it. Yeah. All blame the humans or Mercury. The sun signs and star signs and all. Okay. So a bunch of things I'll be referring a lot of my notes. As I said, we'll not talk about food cooking. We'll not talk about food recipes. We'll talk about food as an identity, because food becomes that one thing which is the most important part. Would you agree? In life, and it's also called as the unifier of sorts. Right? Have you heard this term that food unifies people? Awesome. And have you heard the word food divides people as well? So how is it possible that something which unifies and divides at the same time? ये कैसा फेविक्विक है जो चिपका भी रहा है हटा भी रहा है? Fevicol in this in your language. What is the antidote for Fevicol, by the way? Do we have an antidote of Fevicol? चिपक गया, अब उसको अनचिपकाओ कैसे? हैं? Really scream. मेरे पास तो माइक का ऑप्शन है. Hot water. Oh, the whole thing में ऐसा hot. Oh, nice. Interesting. तो ये कैसा food है which works as hot water and glue at the same time, right? So that's what we'll talk a little bit about. The idea is going to be talk about food from historical perspective, talk about food from the present perspective, big claims of how food unifies and divides, big claims about how food becomes the easiest thing to control, because it's that simple. And for that I will take a little bit, like a 50 minutes of sorts, not more than that. I hope so. Okay. Anybody from Delhi here? Awesome. Have you guys been to Purani Delhi? Have you guys been to Purani Delhi? Awesome. Have you seen this happening anywhere? Have you seen this happening anywhere in the world, actually? Huh. Where have you seen it? हाँ? आई? जोर से बोलना पड़ेगा. बहुत बूढ़ा आदमी मैं बस जवान दिखता हूँ. हाँ. Where have you seen this thing happening? अरे अभी तो किसी ने बोला था. If you're speaking, you're on mute. थोड़ा unmute करके Zoom call पे आइए. Okay. Um, let's talk about the most common dish, biryani. Shall we? It's one of my favorite dishes as well. The discussion about biryani is very simple. Um, my mother makes biryani the best. Somebody else's mother, of course, doesn't make it. My aunt doesn't make it good. I have a favorite biryani shop, and then debate continues. And to the extent that is veg biryani a thing, right? We'll continue that as well. To a dish like this, to the other counterpart would be the curries, the kormas, right? At some point, veg biryani, which you're having, is part of your historical facts and figures, is part of your history. And then that translates further to curries, which then picked up by British as well. And then English people were like, खाना तो हमारा अच्छा बन रहा है, मज़ा तो आ रहा है, लेकिन let's just take it somewhere else. So the first thing was that we will not put it on our table, but we'll eat it. But right now, if you think of biryani, your Zomato, your Swiggy, and everywhere else, every year you get the data of biryani saying this is the number one dish year on year, irrespective whether this is chicken, meat, fish, veg, whatever it is. Usually you get the data. And the curry or the korma, which the English they thought that you know what this is a good thing is to call all of them curry. Anybody who has problem with the word curry itself? Anybody has a problem with curry? That nahi. What is a gravy kind of dish from your region? Anybody who is from Jharkhand? Anybody from Jharkhand? Anybody from Bihar? Assam? Manipur? Kashmir? What is gravy looking dish in your है? Hi? बहुत धीरे बोल रहा हूँ. Okay. Kerala. Kerala. Yes. Your gravy looking dish.
Gravy looking dish.
हाँ,
We
कौन से
have
साथ gravy है?
we have quite a lot of them. We mix them in rice. We mix them in rice. Pulisheri.
Full processing. Okay.
Yeah.
Full processing is one. Um, Tamil Nadu. Chennai. We use rice. Chennai, Salem, Pondicherry. Anybody? No. Yes. A dish from a gravy looking dish. Kazakhstan. Okay. Nice. What did we leave? Gujarat. Anybody from Gujarat? Nobody says yes. Huh? Dal Dobri. That's not a gravy. It was just dal. Right. Rejected. Something else. Something else which has gravy in it. Like sambar, you also talk about sambar is not gravy. Huh? Churi. Okay, chaliye churi. 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 Okay. Sam. Okay. So there are so many. Do you miss out Punjab? Punjab, Amritsar, Ludhiana, Chandigarh. Yes. Eh? What do you sama sama? Okay. Ayah. there's so many different kinds of dishes, no? And yet we resolve only one name, curry. But would you, um, why did we resolve to curry only? What was the logic behind going by curry? That okay, let's just call it curry for the ease, basically. That let's just be easy on calling things out. So whether it is butter chicken, then it becomes chicken gravy dish, which is chicken curry, and then the derivatives of that. There was a company in Bombay which has been making a masala since 1832. You may want to try it, but I would suggest don't. Terrible masala company. For us, but it's one of the topmost for British or British. For the same people, the same guys who actually started. Have you had something called PBJ sandwich? What is the PBJ sandwich? Peanut butter jelly. Same company who actually inspired the British to make peanut butter jelly sandwich. There's also a YouTube video called PBJ. If you haven't watched it, please go and watch it. It's cringy. Yeah, that's the only thing they're singing. So yeah, so that's that. But then the funny was when British was in India, they subjected all these things, biryani, curries, any gravy dishes, into calling this as an Oriental food, not Asian, Oriental. But the same Oriental dish, which is the curry, which is now in the UK called chicken tikka masala, chicken tikka masala with butter chicken, is the national dish and is a £4 billion business. It's a huge thing, right? So if you're going to go to UK somewhere and then you want to start a business like this, there's chances that you may be able to serve something there. I don't know what exactly, but some kind of gravy, and then you will be able to sell it, because not just because of Indian, but a lot of UK folks would like to have something. So now, from calling it an Oriental dish to actually going to making it a national dish. A roughly story of how old do you think gravy dish is in India? Guess. Yes. Random guess. Correct. Somebody has to read the deck as a thing. 3000 roughly. 3000 years back is when we decided to let's excavate. Not that we decided to excavate 3000 years back, we excavate right now. And we realized that we were having a gravy based dish. So a gravy based dish, pre everything. Our favorite topic of pre-Mughal, our favorite topic of pre-British, our favorite topic of pre-humanity, Indian humanity, pre-Aryan race maybe, pre-whatever, is when the excavation happened, we realized that, oh, 3000 years of history that we've been having a gravy-based dish with, take a wild guess, what are we having it with? Why? क्या लगता है 3000 साल पहले हम कामचोर थे नहीं काम तो हम तभी करते हैं. Do you know there's a parallel between people who eat rice versus roti and education? Huh? What is the parallel? Correct. But opinion, yes, but also because the women in general are cooking roti, whereas rice is jhatpat cooked and then sorted, right? And then that gives them enough time. It's like invention of washing machine, and then education as well. Anyway, so now we say, but how do we then study what is happening with a 3000 years old history to Britishers first calling something Oriental and not really putting it on our dining table then making it the national dish in the UK. Of course, changing the name. You can debate on chicken tikka masala, who gave chicken tikka masala to the UK, whether it went from India, whether it went from Pakistan, from Bangladesh. That's a long debate for some other day. But the dish becomes still Indian subcontinental. So I'm going to give you two tools, right? Essentially, on which is what I'm going to read right now. That one of the food historian called J. McClancy, he said a very interesting thing about identity. That identity itself is a trap. That it traps you, right? It's like something. It's like wearing a hat. Is wearing a hat your identity? I mean, it can be if you're going to be wearing it for like forever and ever after. But it doesn't really attach to your lapse onto you, right? You can change that, and then suddenly your identity goes away. So what he gives us is five ways. He says literary identity, which is through cookbooks, uh, food writing. Acha, within food writing as well. Anybody interested in reading food writing? Food writing? Food writing, food writing. Cookbook or food writing, the difference in that sense, right? What is the difference between food writing and cookbook? Got it. Correct. Um, Cookbooks are, in that sense, very prescriptive. Cookbooks are passed on like a workshop. It's also not necessarily true that whatever the cooks actually or the cookbook actually said is what they were making. Take it from me, as somebody who writes cookbook and history books. Sometimes you just write it because it feels nice to have a fat book. अच्छा लगा भारी भरकम मोटा किताब लिखा है. People take it seriously. Uh, in one of my research, I remember stumbling upon this one very interesting dish. It is anybody who's a meat eater here? People eat meat somewhere. This was an interesting book because this one talked about meat cooked in sugar syrup. Yeah, meat cooked in sugar syrup. Now I also tried making them. Let's try. I realized that maybe this is not something which they were eating, and there was no name of it. They can't. So this prescriptive that it gives you a prescription of how to make it, but not telling you that whether you want to make it or not. It's just one of those many things that is there in the book. Second one is your rituals. Is your feast, communal meal, food as a theater. What could be a ritual? What is the local ritual here? Yes. Yeah, that's a ritual, correct? Jalebi fafda, is that a ritual? When is, especially for people who are from Gujarat, when is jalebi fafda eaten the most? Why? Ever ever asked? घर में आ तो गया जलेबी फाफड़ा जेठालाल लेके आ गया, but why are you having it? Because technically jalebi is not Indian. Dasera is. So why are we having jalebi fafda on Dasera? And that was jalebi fafda in Dasera only in Gujarat. Nowhere else people are having jalebi fafda Dasera. Also because Ramji didn't come. Did he come to Gujarat by the way? No, I don't think he has any connection to Gujarat. He may have had it, but I'm saying is this is not the mainland. Because it is believed, and this is ritual. So take it with a pinch of salt. Mythology hai. If you believe in mythology, go for it. Is that Ramji, when he was exiled, he used to like eating something similar to this round spiral thing, which is like jalebi, which was called something shakri something. I'm forgetting the name, shakri something. So that, and then also because besan was easy to them to fry things. Now the question that you might want to ask is, तेल कब आया था वहाँ पे तो? जंगल में तेल तो मिलेगा नहीं. But that's besides the point. The point here is this, right? That because of that ritual, we now serve jalebi fafda in Gujarat only. Nowhere else Ramji is eating jalebi or fafda. Jalebi, of course, did not come from India because jalebi is zalabiya or zulebiya, and then zalabiya becomes jalebi in India. Right? Now, of course, you can make it anywhere, however you want, but that's a ritual. That's a good ritual. Or from death, from your birth to your death days, you have some ritual happening. Third one is something called historiographic, which is do you know what is historiographic? Do you want to take a random jab at it? What is historiographic? No? Okay. Historiographic is when you consume one of those Instagram reels or go to a restaurant and it says authentic or 400 years old and we haven't changed the recipe. Right? That's historiographic. We'll come to that as well in a moment, but just hold on to these things. Then, of course, the last two more is your culinary, which is through chefs and restaurants, and when they are talking about food and when they are documenting food. And then the last one is local. Again, going back to Jalebi Fawda, and how the locals then identify it. So that's one way to look at it. The second way to look at it is something called gastrosematics, which is looking at food as language. Simple. No science, no nothing. Look at food as language. Food has hierarchy, food has history, has power. That's it. It's simple. I like this definition better of understanding food in a better form. But now let's say we are of course come to from a very power to looking at world from a very different perspective, is to understanding food from a Mughal's perspective. Why do we always resort to Mughals? Can somebody take a wild guess? Take a wild guess. Because when this chap came in, Baba, by this time he did the war. He was the founder. जब मुगल टाइप का स्टार्टअप खोला था उस टाइम पर 1526 में जब स्टार्टअप इन्होंने दुकान डाली अपनी, तो मेन फाउंडर ये थे. उससे पहले देयर फाइट्स हैपनिंग, वॉर्स हैपनिंग, एवरीथिंग हैपनिंग, बट पीपल आर नॉट फोकस्ड ऑन फूड इटसेल्फ because they're fighting. So you would find passing remarks. Have you heard of Ibn Battuta? Anybody heard of? You heard the song Ibn Battuta? Anybody? Who has heard the song? Right. Who has heard the name? Have you heard the Ibn Battuta name because of the song? Right. You know what Ibn Battuta means? बहुत ही मतलब, it means nothing. Yeah. You know what Ibn means? Ibn means लड़का, या मतलब पप्पा, मतलब उसके. So Ibn Battuta is बतूते का लड़का. नाम ही नहीं दिया उनको, यही चल रहा है. तुम्हें लगता है लेडीज लोग को नाम नहीं देते, पंचाली बोल देते उसको? नहीं नहीं नहीं. यहाँ इब्न बतूता also has a longer name, but इब्न बतूता is just बतूते का लड़का. और बतूते का लड़का जो बस घूमने निकल गया था. इंस्टाग्राम वंडरलस्ट. जब इब्न बतूता टाइप लोग निकल रहे थे, so then they documented food on the way to when he was in India, saying, oh, Delhi mein, when he landed in Delhi, he landed in Delhi during Lodi's Sultanate, and saying, oh, Lodi Khilji se aspas aate aate, and he was talking about how people eat samosas here without aloo, by the way, and how people eat different kinds of breads here. But all these were just a passing remark. They were not main dishes like here. मार्को पोलो का नाम सुना किसने? स्वेटर बनाता है वो, स्वेटर कंपनी मार्को नहीं, मार्को पोलो. कोलंबस का नाम सुना ही होगा. कोलंबस के चक्कर में सब जो है रायता फैला है. वुड यू अग्री कि कोलंबस चक्कर में ही रायता फैला है? वाई वुड यू अग्री? इस जबरदस्ती का क्यों अग्री किया? हाँ, ट्रेड तो पहले से होता. ट्रेड आज से नहीं. ट्रेड some Arab world started in the 9th and 8th century. Uh, so Arab world will come and do the trading in the south, right? And they were called the Maplas. So there's Mapla Jews, there's Maplas Christians, there's Mapla Muslims, different ways of understanding Mapla. मतलब the term itself of Maplas or Mapla, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, तो trade तो चल रहा है. ये कोलंबस ने क्या रायता फैलाया? किसने हाँ बोला है? बताया जरा. You said yes, no. वास्को डिगामा तो उसने बेचारा मर गया. कुछ कर नहीं पाया बेचारे वास्को डिगामा. कोलंबस ने रायता इसलिए फैला दिया क्योंकि ट्रेड तो अच्छा चल रहा है अब तक, ठीक है. काली मिर्च मस्त चल रही है, सोने की चिड़ियाँ उड़ रही हैं, सब चल रहा है बढ़िया, सब हाजिर फ्री चल रहे हैं. ये कोलंबस ही लड़का था जिसको बहुत ज़्यादा जो दिल्ली के इलाके में चुल बची थी, उसने जो है लोकेशन पिन ड्रॉप कर दिया. मतलब अभी तक जो ट्रेड ज़्यादा मस्त ज़्यादा छुप छुपा के काम होके निकल गया. इट्स लाइक वन ऑफ योर पेडलर्स, किसी को पता नहीं है, ठीक है. जगह सब बढ़िया चल रहा है. सडनली भाई साहब ने जाके बता दिया कि अरे ऐसे देखो रूट तो ये है. द मोमेंट द वर्ल्ड गॉट टू नो द रूट ये है, सो देन द वर्ल्ड स्टार्ट कमिंग इन टू गेट मोर एंड मोर एंड मोर एंड मोर एंड देन यू सी द रिजल्ट व्हाट हैपेंड इवेंचुअली. इट्स अ सिंप्लीफिकेशन बाय द वे, सो डोंट गो बैक यही हुआ था नहीं, नॉट एग्जैक्टली. बट when Columbus went back, he went back. So मतलब पहले घूमते घूमते अमेरिका चले गए थे, वो भी अंडर लफ्टा थे. बट जब वो इंडिया पहुंचे फाइनली तो यहाँ से काली मिर्च लेके गए. Why did he take? There's a good old joke कि से English came to India to pick up the spices and their food is bland. It's a terrible joke to begin with. But why was the world using black pepper and spices and wanted to pick it up from India, Sri Lanka? Any random thing? Yeah. Yeah, so the rare spice, sure, but what do they do with it? तो खाना तो bland ही है. What were they doing with it? It was type of currency as well, used as a type of currency. People using spices for mummies. Tutankhamun, Egypt, right? So to preserve, the word is the salary word. Salary comes from the word salt, because salt was also used as salary at one point. It's a Greek word. So yeah, so that's. तो अब वहाँ से ये सब चल रहा है. खैर जब इनकी आते हैं उससे पहले लड़ाइयाँ चल रही हैं. पीपल आर नॉट फोकस्ड ऑन अदर थिंग्स. बाय दिस टाइम व्हेन बाबर कम्स इन, देन ओके लेट्स एस्टैब्लिश आवर स्टार्टअप हियर, एंड देन ही कंटिन्यूज, राइट. वी हैव अ फ्यू ऑफ द नेम्स. बाबर वाज वन ऑफ दोज टिपिकल मेन मेंटालिटी. काम तो बढ़िया चल रहा है लेकिन रैंटिंग भी चल रही है. सो फर्स्ट ही कम्स टू इंडिया फ्रॉम, where did he come from? हाय उज़्बेकिस्तान. हाँ चलेगा. उज़्बेकिस्तान, समरकंद, वहीं से घूम के आ गए. लड़ाई कहाँ हुई थी? What was the anybody remember the history class in the school? School में होगा, कॉलेज में होगा. Take a random guess. Correct. Whoever said Panipat is right. Who said Panipat? Correct. It's really interesting, no? But where was he ruling from? नहीं वो तो हो गया. तो लड़का था उसने 18 साल लड़का था, मतलब तुम्हारे टाइप का, सेम उम्र. देखो तुम्हारे उम्र में लड़का कहाँ क्या कर रहे थे. So what where was he ruling from? He came to India. हो गया, इंडिया में एस्टैब्लिशमेंट हो गया, दुकान लग गई. दुकान कहाँ लगी थी? हैं? दिल्ली में ही नहीं लगी थी. लड़ाई दिल्ली की हो रही है. फनीस्ट दुकान आगरा में लगी. लड़ाई हुई कहाँ? पानीपत में. दिल्ली की लड़ाई पानीपत में. आई ऑलवेज से पानीपत हरियाणा इज द स्टार्टअप प्लेस, को वर्किंग स्पेस है वो सब. उन्हें बाद दिल्ली में क्यों लड़ाई करना है? तुम इधर आओ. यहाँ तक दो पानीपत की लड़ाई हुई है. पानीपत वॉर 1, सेकंड. देन ऑल्सो द अदर वॉर हैपेंस इन अ लिटिल ऑफ रामपुर. देन यू हैव पलासी which is in Bengal. All these fight for Delhi, but never in Delhi. Like, अच्छा बड़ा बढ़िया शहर है, क्यों बात करना है? चलो बाहर लड़ाई करते हैं. So when Babur comes in, Babur was living here nicely, सब अच्छा चला, but he kept on complaining as well, saying मजा ही नहीं आ रहा है. One of those employees को अच्छा नौकरी अच्छी मिल गई है, लेकिन complain करना है. So that was Babur. But because of Babur, we also got a lot of food within the country itself. A lot of your melons kind of stuff that you eat, right? Sun melon, musk melon, watermelon, zarda, etc. came because of him. Bunch of dry fruits came because of him, because he was like, अगर अपने ऑफिस में कॉफी नहीं मिल रही है तो कहीं से तो कॉफी मशीन लगाना पड़ेगा. That's what him. कि ठीक है, I will start getting. So Babur started with that, right? Babur के बाद सीधे Akbar didn't come, of course. There's other rulers as well in between. But by the time Akbar comes in, Akbar के time तक fight was little less. So Akbar started focusing on kitchen. अभी तक Babur essentially was this party boy. बाहर जाएंगे, जंग करेंगे, वहीं पे घूमेंगे, खाएंगे, पिएंगे, घर निकल लेंगे, बस. ठीक है? Typical Sunday को in your family, if the men of your family is cooking every day, great. If they're not, then वो Sunday बनाएंगे. और जो Sunday को बनता है वो छाते बनता है. So that's the Babur mentality. When Babur moves, and then you have Akbar. Akbar's kitchen ran as physician. Same guys whom we call today as dietitian. Essentially dietitian. So dietitian will tell you. So dietitian here gave like, oh, kya banana, nahi banana. So that's Akbar. And he also opened up entry houses. That okay, eating houses. Bade bade ghar, kitchen ban gaye. And now you can whip up 100, 200 dishes in one go. In like 1 hour, 2 hours, you can whip up these dishes. So Akbar modified the entire thing. Then you have, coming to Jahangir. Jahangir, by the way, declared himself as Sahib-e-Zaiqa Ali. Anybody whose Urdu is bahut bhari, acha? Anybody who can translate that into regular layman's? What is Sahib-e-Zaiqa Ali? Hey? Say what? Arishtu, likha bhi hai. Grandmaster of taste. Padh nahi rahe to. But king of flavor. He's like, bhai, main hi hu. Connoisseur. How can he call himself connoisseur? बिल्कुल कर सकता है, राजा था वो. ठीक है? Kings, this is what kings and rulers like. I call myself this. He is. Zomato rating 5 out of 5. So then, but here, Akbar के time पे he wrote a couple of books. He didn't write books. Why did Akbar never write a book? Why did Akbar never write a book? Hi? Because he was illiterate. किसने बताया था? किसने बताया? तो बत्ता बड़ा आदमी है, तुम उसको अनपढ़ बोल रहे हो? हैं? नहीं, सही बोल रहे हो. जोधा अकबर देखी नहीं तुमने? Nobody has seen जोधा अकबर. मस्त जोधा भाई लव लेटर लिख लाती हैं, बोलती है ये लो पढ़ो. लगेगा एक्सक्यूज मी, क्या लिखा है सब? किसी और को देगा, रोमांस पे किसी और के. इट्स लाइक हैविंग लाइक अ ट्रांसलेटर देयर. तो किसका फीलिंग आ रहा समझ में नहीं आ रहा. तो खैर, he was illiterate, and yet he got a lot of books written. The guy who was writing books for him was called Abul Fazl. Of course, you have Jahangir, who wrote a lot of memoirs. I'll come to that as well, about memoirs he got. Then comes your Shah Jahan. Shah Jahan कौन है? Wild guess? ताजमहल वाले, correct. और अरे दिल्ली वालों, कौन है शाहजहान? हैं? अरे पुरानी दिल्ली वाला, जहाँ मस्जिद बनाया इसने, लाल किला. नहीं, कौन था पुरानी दिल्ली का हाथ खड़ा करता था फिर से? The guy who said I'm from Delhi, हाथ खड़ा करना. और तुम लोग खान मार्केट का आएगा नहीं हो. समझ आ रहा है? शाहजहान, Old Delhi was called Shahjahanabad. You know another nice term, abode. You know the word abode? Abode पता किसी को? हैं? What does abode means? Correct. Comes from the word Correct. So Shah Jahanabad, right? Or Jahanabad. So Shah Jahanabad was Shah Jahan. He got the cookbook as well called Nuskha Shah Jahani. Now read is called Nuskha. You know what a Nuskha is? Don't read this now. You know what a Nuskha is? A Nuskha. When you go to a doctor, what do you get? Apart from the bill? Prescription. So Nuskha is a prescription. So this book is not a cookbook. It is a prescription of what to eat. That's it, right? In a cooking format, that how to eat as well. And then of course comes Aurangzeb, who also got a lot of books. I'll come to that as well. And by this time, food was a lot better. And then of course, who was the last Mughal? Hi? Correct. We'll come to Zafar as well. Now, interestingly, now here tak to, because we talked about a little bit of spices, abhi tak yahan, if you look at all these things, interestingly, all of Mughal clan, the food, let's talk about the food they were eating. What kind of food do you think they were eating? And the food that the commoners were eating. And how do we know what the commoners were eating? 3 questions, Yobe. Random guess मान लो यार, कोमा ही बोल दो. हैं? Lot of meat, sure. Why? Okay, makes sense. Sure. So, Akbar mostly ate khichdi. बहुत पेट खराब रहता उनका. खाना ही हजम नहीं होता इनको. Aurangzeb also ate khichdi. He called it laziza. Laziza comes from the word laziz. Laziz means delicious. इनके खिचड़ी में जाती थी ड्राई फ्रूट्स, गरीब लोग टाइप नहीं, मेथी, मेथी कड़वा वाला मेथी और मस्टर्ड का तड़का घी के साथ में भर के ड्राई फ्रूट्स. क्यों ड्राई फ्रूट्स? क्योंकि बहुत ये थे और पैसा भी था. तो वो शाहजहां भी खिचड़ी खा रहे हैं. शाहजहां की खिचड़ी में मछली जाती है. क्यों? क्योंकि पेट खराब है, हजम नहीं हो पा रहा. सब ग्लूटेन इंटॉलरेंट है, लैक्टोज इंटॉलरेंट है, ग्रेन सब इंटॉलरेंट है कुछ ना कुछ तरीके से. सो ऑफ्टन टाइम्स यूजुअल देयर फूड इज खिचड़ी, but they are also serving, so they are serving the feasts to people, similar to kormas and other stuff. But what are the people eating? That's the biggest thing. Inside Red Fort, if you talk about Shah Jahan, right? Shah Jahan onward, people lived in Red Fort. Most people are eating nice, not khichdi, not a medicinal type of cheese, but a heavy meal, like a nahari would. Trivia question. Why did Akbar, Shah Jahan ate biryani, by the way, right? Akbar didn't eat biryani. Why? ये रहे अकबर भाई साहब. सबके हाथ में चिड़िया है, सब लोग अपना लेफ्ट प्रोफाइल दिखा रहा है. Why did Akbar not eat biryani? I'll guess मान लिया, तो दिमाग लगाना नहीं है. Random guess. तब तक मैं ऐसे नोट कर लेता हूँ, मुझे मालूम चलना चाहिए. Because बिरयानी अभी तक आई नहीं है. शाहजहां के टाइम पे बिरयानी was introduced, which I talked about. Biryani was introduced as a medicinal thing. It was never used or introduced as a dinner, as a proper meal. It was introduced as a medicinal thing with Unani medicines or ways of Unanis and Ayurveds. Right? You have the meat, you have the rice, you have fat, you have carb, everything put together, good for warriors. That's it. But then people liked it, people as in the royal family liked it, and then that's when it became the part of their full course meal. Alright, so that's about these guys. So powerful people are having meal, mostly kormas. Lesser power people are having meal outside, mostly the khichdi. Now think of 1600 to roughly 1800s. Like before the mutiny, before 1847, right? Most people outside are having simple meal, and that simple meal includes 2 things: It's either going to be grain based, which is khichdi, or going to be heavy meat based, which is rejected things, which is called nahari or nihari, however you want to call it. Right? These are the only two dishes which you can find documented that what people were eating outside. But where are in the entire fiasco women? अभी तक तो सिर्फ मर्द ही खड़ा है यहाँ पर एक लाइन से. Now for women, I have interesting thing. A historian called Caroline Walker, she reads medieval Europe, and she talks about that how most women had a kitchenette, not kitchen, right, which is just for them. But this was also a time when the fasting comes into picture as well, when women are fasting, not necessarily for them, but for somebody else, because men have to go on balls, so somebody else have to worship the god, and they can't do both at the same time, because ya to ladenge ya fir. So that's when the women comes in, and that's where women would sort of partake this entire situation, which is to just fast for their husbands. Now that would decide a bunch of things. That would also not just decide what the commoners are eating, but also it would decide how much women are eating, what time they would eat, when they would eat, and what exactly they are going to eat. So it could be in some civilization or in some cities and some states within India, you could eat meat, whereas otherwise you can have, because you haven't had food since the morning, you will have only the veg food, or you'll have dal or something of that sort, so that it's easy on your stomach. How much you eat is also dependent on how much women eat is dependent on who. Random guess? Men of the family, because men are served first. So whatever amount of food is left is then goes to women, irrespective whether you're fasting or not. Right? Now, dinner in general had high stakes. When I'm saying high stakes, I mean not just steaks, but like high stakes in general. Now, mostly within this entire space, what's happening is they're trying to now bring the food from a very different Unani perspective. Now, Unani tip, which is Greek-Arabic, right? When we think of spice within the country itself, and we say, ki, oh, how do we eat spices and how does it affect us in general? So if you think of regions, which is hot and dry, and also the kind of spices that you eat, that leads you to anger, like mirchi. One of the reasons why they always used to say that Marathas are such a warrior clan, or Rajasthan is such a warrior clan, is because the weather and the spices or the food that they will have would make them that, right? Versus cold and moist. What could be a cold masala? Have you used masalas in general? What is a cold masala? Haldi could be, sure, cold and moist. Haldi would be cold and dry, yes. What would be cold and moist? Ilaichi would be cold and moist, yes. Ilaichi, saunf, right? So, depending on who you are, depending on the kinds of spices you eat, is also then goes on to your mood, right? Which then defines what you are as a clan. Whether you're a warrior clan or you are an Aram Pasand clan who is just or saffron kind of a clan. Saffron matlab zafran wala, Aram karne wala log. So that is one. Now, which also meant that eating wrong becomes a morally worse person. That it's not that you are not a problem, basis Unani. It's the food you're having. So such a nice way of talking to people. Na, problem tum nahi hai, problem ba khane mein hai. Which is a very motherly thing to say. कि तबीयत खराब है खाना ज़्यादा खा लिया होगा. तबीयत खराब है खाना कम खाया होगा. पेट दर्द कर रहा है क्या खाया था. पेट दर्द कर रहा है कुछ नहीं खाया होगा इसीलिए. So everything is connected to food in general. Right? अब तो मोबाइल फ़ोन का एग्जाम्पल नहीं दिया जा सकता because everybody has, even mother will have the mobile phone. But the food is something which can easily be controlled. So that's when a lot of the mishmash of masalas and mishmash of food started happening, right? To balance your 4 ways of mood. Ayurveda tells you the same thing. Ayurveda has 3 doshas. So basis what you are feeling, angry most of times or not, then that's your dosh, and then that can be fixed through eating food. Now, eating well is kept as a moral activity. That it is a moral activity that people must eat food. Then, with a interesting term, which is a Persian term called dimag. You know dimag, right? So apply the brain in bringing the food to people. How food would identify yourself is akhlaq, is your discipline or how you're having to your now akhlaq is where the food was nicely happening. Everybody pretty much British, Mughal, pre-Mughal, uh, Ashokan dynasty, anybody. Akhlaq was something which is what you all look for in your food. Then your Jahangir again comes back with a philosophical lens that how do I serve food to my people, and then you have the Jafar Khan who then talks about how do I, how does food smell, etc. works into your food life. Okay, and then the last bit is this, which I mentioned about Shah Jahan, which I mentioned about the Raisa Saila, and then the Khawan and Nemat. Now here, uh, in these spaces, again back to the cookbook, is that you're understanding food from not a cooking perspective, not from the who is eating what, but from a perspective of what you are actually having and how much of an impact it will have on you, right? Then that brings me to your very simple thing, which is principles of Mughal cuisine. And now think of this, why principle of Mughal cuisine only? Why was this not principles of any cuisine? Right? Wouldn't this be the most common thing ever? Would you agree? Huh? Would you agree that taste, smell, texture, sight? These are things that is common in general. Pick any fancy ass restaurant which charges 600 rupees for a small dish, which you can have for 200 rupees as well, or 100 rupees, or 50 bucks. Would these four things apply? Yes, no, maybe so. No? Should ideally. Now, but the reason of calling it out here as a Mughal thing to do, because then they were like when things were still finalizing, and all these are still, by the way, a very. Who would eat this, by the way? Let's go with that. Who would eat? What kind of people would look for these three, four things in their dishes? Huh? Who had some time to eat? Correct. Who has time to eat? Who has less physical labor in life? Rich people, right? So this, who can afford 600-700 rupees right now, and then of course, is somebody who can do justice, who can employ people to serve this. Again, still is a food which is a very kingly, princely food. Only the fancy rich people will have. The poor people still are not having the same thing. The poor people will hold on to which one? Where would the poor or not have will stop? If the rich people are finding all the four things, the poor people will stop at something? Just the taste. Just here, nothing else. So, same era, pick British, pick now, pick Mughal, pick pre-Mughal. Same era, similar kind of food, pick khichdi, something which people are eating inside, something people are eating outside. Inside you'll find with dry fruits, outside you'll find basic simple khichdi. Because what you can't afford and versus what you can or who can afford what kind of things. Then comes your here. This is what I was talking about, that how suddenly the women gender also came in, that how do we control the women folks on eating what kind of food that they will have. This is an interesting point, and I want a question as well on. We talk about black pepper so much in life, And back to khichdi. Who was eating black pepper the most? Any wild guess? Around Mughal time itself, of course. So think of 1800s, 1900s. Black pepper was still expensive ingredient. It wasn't the poor people. It was still the rich people. Still the Britishers who were eating the black pepper. And same goes with cardamom as well. So commoner would not have black pepper. Commoner would not have cardamom. The authentic taste, which I talked about in the beginning itself, that authentic taste is not authentic from 400 years old, but it's a 4 days old authentic taste. 4 days because restaurant में 4 दिन का पुराना खाना तो मिलेगा कम से कम. Okay, and then I said the British comes in. Interestingly, with British, when the Britishers came in, the medical or their dietitian told them eat simple food. Don't do extravaganza. ये नहीं कि मतलब अच्छा भी इंडिया गए मस्त खाना मिलेगा. नहीं, चुपचाप से रहो, जो खाना है सिंपल खाना खाओ. They didn't listen. They said, okay, no. So their dishes had these things. They had fish curry, eggs, pale ale or ale, coffee, muffins, dinner, turkey meat, ham hai, mutton hai, pigeon pie, blah, 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 blah. Philip Francis says, problem is the mawsam. No, Philip, the problem was not the mawsam. The problem was that you were told that don't eat all these things because your stomach is not going to be really able to adapt. It's like dilly billy, which happens right now. And that's exactly when the British then thought that, okay, let's do one thing. Let's just push all these things through as an oriental food, and then we can all be happy, and we'll say, okay, these are terrible food, these are not for us, versus something which is our food. And that's where the racial identity comes in, that the moment you push people's food out, then you have it racially sidelined. That, okay, yours is this, mine is that. British was from Europe side in that sense. What European food they were having? Any guesswork on that? What European food they were eating? French. If you agree with French, say yes. Portuguese. अरे पिज्जा पास्ता कुछ तो खा रहे होंगे, कॉफी तो पी रहे हैं हमें पता है, पिजन पाई भी खा रहे हैं. French cooking mostly, even though they were fighting, but French cooking mostly was their thing. Now, as I said, the food, if you control people's food, which we discussed in the beginning itself, the unifier versus divider. Think of 2 famines that happened. One happened in 1943, one happened in 1905 or 6, right after Bengal's first partition. Grains were denied to Indians by the British, and of course Winston Churchill, who is often celebrated name in the UK, not necessarily in India, controlled the food and then said famine removed from official dispatches. The word itself were removed. So that's how you essentially control all your ways of controlling people. Because the moment you deny them food, they will sort of bow down to you. They will bow down to you. They will listen to you. They will listen to you. They will work upon you, work with you on whatever you want. And easiest denominator. Think of Strait of Hormuz right now. Why is Strait of Hormuz so much in demand suddenly? Wild guess, why is Hormuz so much in demand? Eh? Yes, sure, but what does it do? But not just oil. Because people are still getting oil from somewhere. It's a lot of other things also coming from the same route. That's when US said, okay, wo bhi block kar do. So if you're going to block everything, then how will you get the food? That's a tactic basically you also apply in war. That's supply card, food supply card. Now South Asia's fine dining. So abhi kya hai? But now let's think of now. 4 things coming back, but in a newer form. That's how we are reclaiming it. One is South Asian chefs are coming up because they are fighting against this entire notion that hamara food hamara nahi hai. Indian food often 15 years back, not anymore. If anybody is going to tell you right now that oh Indian food is so overlooked in the US and the UK, no please. थप्पड़ मचा देना, मतलब बिल्कुल नहीं है. ऐसे जबरदस्ती का ऐसे a lot of chefs will come today and like oh my god, so bad, nobody likes the food, everybody likes the food. 15 years back, if somebody said that, yes, I agree with that person. Today, if that person says one tight award मिल रहा है, so how then we started reclaiming our food, saying this is how, if our food looks ugly to you, that's your problem, not ours. Simple as that. Food tourism, all your walks and stuff, local mode, your diaspora coming in and then talking about it, and however gender still become the problem is that gender food is still controlled. Think of a festival. Think of any festival. What's the festival coming up recently? अभी अगले महीने कुछ है कुछ festival? Any festival? कुछ तो होगा अगले महीने. नहीं है पता नहीं. Let's say Karwa Chauth itself, right? Who is doing the Karwa Chauth? Who is fasting and who is cooking? In a regular household, right? Think of Ramadan. Think of fasting period. For 30 days, the whole family fasts. But who is the one cooking? Who is the one still listening to all the demands of the Raja Beta? Who is making sure that the food is still on table and fasting at the same time? So gender hasn't moved completely from an identity perspective. And कितनी ही लड़ाइयाँ कर लो gender को लेकर और identity लेकर, one thing which hasn't happened yet is refusing to eat food. So you ban the ingredients oftentimes, you ban the way of eating food. What is one dish that anybody traveled outside recently? India or outside? Anything that you were bringing were banned to bring or to take? No? सब बढ़िया से चला गया तुम लोग यार, क्या बात है? Oftentimes, the easiest as a lowest denominator to control is the food itself, and that tells you a different story of different times. 2-3 examples. Because we started with butter chicken. Why was butter chicken so popular? Or why is butter chicken so popular? Guess. Because it is a trucker's food. Truckers, the travelers, the truck people, it's their food. There is no recipe. They popularize it, and that's when you start to make butter chicken worldwide. Everybody loves it. So that's one popularity. Why is vada pav so popular? Anybody? Wild guess? Because it is labor's food. You can shit all you want on that saying, oh, it's carb on carb. But the point is, it's not your food anyway. Stop eating it if you have carb on carb. But it's a labor's food, right? They need heavy duty carb. What else is popular? Why is pizza so popular? Huh? It's also meant for labor folks. Roti, sauce, veg, meat, whatever, roll it up, or have it sliced. So that, what else is popular? Which has a controversial or not so controversial thing. Anything else that you can think of is popular? Huh? Think, huh? Pani Puri. Pani Puri is popular, nice. Why is Pani Puri so popular? Easy to eat. I don't know why it's popular. Why is matcha so popular? Now think of the modern times. Why is matcha so popular suddenly? Why is avocado so popular suddenly? Huh? Trendy? Why? Yes, of course. Popular matlab trendy. How come suddenly avocado became the trend? Which was never the case, right? Matcha became the trend, which was not the case. Which was the case long back, but it went and came back. Simple, because somebody is pushing it, which you don't know, but somebody is pushing for avocados, somebody is pushing for, or the current, since the last 1 week I've been hearing about Diet Coke as well. I don't understand it, the fascination about Diet Coke. If you do, please don't tell me about it, because I still won't understand it. So the Diet Coke is popular, right? That's a trend part, right? And the last bit is, because we talked about gender, let's talk about gender as well and finish it. Why do women eat last from their identity perspective? Anyone who has noticed this happening in the family? Why do women eat last? Partly right, yes. Because so you're saying because women are making it, and if they would start eating, who will make the food? Correct? Anybody else? So social norm in that sense. Okay. Anybody else? Yes. To nourish is their nature. Okay. Yes. Okay. So same thing that somebody has to cook and serve. So okay. Absolutely. So people believing that the wife should eat last. Anybody else? All of you right, not wrong, but there's also very one basic thing which made all these things the thing that you're coming to, the root cause itself. Have you hosted a party? Who has hosted a small group? That's please. You have? How many people you hosted? 10 people. And you ordered food or you cooked the food? You cooked the food. And when did you eat the food? Why? Why? So, what is that responsibility? That they should eat enough. But how does she know that they should eat enough? What is the enough? No one left hungry. How would she know this? There's not left. There's enough left for you, but everybody else has had it. How would you have the view of that? How do you know that there's enough food for them? Because you're hosting it, simple. So you know how much food is there. Correct? Same thing happens with the women as well. Because they're the one making the food. So, which means within here, everything that you all have said is an identity part. That because women are cooking, of course you have to serve it hot and all that, that's everything that you said. But because they are the only one who has the view. How much food is left. Which means somebody's body is more important than, in your case, those 10 people's stomach or hunger was more important than yours. Would that be okay to assume? Yeah? Because you're like, oh my god, 10 log bhi khā jaake phir WhatsApp mein bolenge khana kam pad gaya. Correct? And you don't want that. So, saying their body matters most in that situation. I'm not saying throughout, but in that situation. And if that becomes a norm, that every time when you're hosting people, in that case your family, only you have the view of the kitchen, of the ingredient, you would eat last. Right? Think of a barat. They would eat always last because they know ki khana kitna hai bacha hua. Because only they have the view. And then that becomes a social norm, that becomes expectation. And when it becomes expectation, it becomes ritual. When it becomes ritual, it becomes the rule. Right? And that's your identity there as well. Of who eats last. Not necessarily only on gender, but because it could be that you are, if not you, anybody else, any boy who has hosted anything recently? I think मजाक में हाथ खड़ा कर दो यार. Hopeless. Okay, please go and host. So yeah, so that becomes your identity. So yeah, so food is your then a very universal language to bring it, and because you can't refuse to eat, and the argument about whether food can be controlled or not, whether food has power or not, whether it can hold things or not, or whether what we eat is often decided by somebody else, and how much also uh, the argument never ends. The answer is to, what is the answer if the argument never ends? That's it. That's the only argument. Just keep eating. हर बात पे लड़ाई नहीं करना होता है. All right. On that, if you have questions, feel free to throw. Yes.
I had a question about the role of gender in kitchens. So you had mentioned, and it's also very prominent to see that if you go to a restaurant, most of the cooking staff will be male, but at homes it is women's. And in a way, you also mentioned how women used to have kitchenettes and not kitchens. But then there's also norms and stereotypes and rules, as we could say, that are associated with women in the kitchen, but it's also used as an argument to put women down, but in both ways, that you belong here and also that you don't belong in a more sophisticated space, which is a bigger kitchen. How does that sort of a disparity exist, because it's the same thing?
In general, hypocrisy, if you can. And second, when I'm thinking hypocrisy, I was talking about it, you're not smart enough to run a business. And that's not that was the norm. Teaching in the kitchen, you will find not a lot of women in the kitchen. And they're competitive by a partition and position. Partition is where there's position is where you have reached in the geeks. You find a lot of women in the geek position. There's something that biology. One is biology, because there's so hard. But again, which is also biology, because the biologist is also a politician, because it needs a lot more education. Second is but मेरा माइक क्या बंद किया जा रहा है. So cooking in general, if you think of it, versus lifting. So the kitchenette, all these heavy lifting was done by somebody who's a man Friday types, who will do heavy lifting, who will bring all the things, but the women then will cook. So वो department wise था. But kitchenette is still here because women are not hosting such a big gathering. They're just cooking for themselves, because most of these commercial angle of the food would be done by men. But and that has it has become the norm. It's not. Can you challenge it? Sure. People are challenging it now. You'll find a lot of big fancy chefs being women. Also, like when I'm saying big fancy, I mean they've got awards and everything. Two name I can think of is Asma Khan and Karima, Chef Karima. Both are different spaces. One is in Bangkok, other one in the UK. Different world, different ethnicity, different belief in religion itself. but two fabulous people who are running award-winning restaurants. So things are changing. How long will it take? Well, to make what you asked as norm, as a regular thing, it took forever. I'm sure it will take forever as well. But it'll change. I'm hopeful. Yes. Thank you for that. Did I answer the question? Awesome. Anybody else has anything? Yes, sorry.
Hello. So basically, with a lot of different food choices, there's a tendency to have moral hierarchy as to what is okay, what is good and what is bad. But when associating food with such ideologies, it becomes difficult to have your identity related to that or hold that identity to yourself, because sometimes it can lead to fear or shame and things like that. So is there a way to reduce that fear, or like reduce or increase the amount of empathy? What are some ways to get
Good
there?
question. How do we? I feel people are less empathetic in general. They become more pathetic than empathetic. Um, a great way of doing it, which is also happening, um, is sharing food. I'm saying sharing food is happening in the modern times. Sharing food happens through all these supper clubs. If almost every smaller community has a supper club or like an invite only kind of place where you can go and have their cuisine. So it could be, let's say you're from Kashmir and you want to serve Kashmiri food because that's what you know how to make the best. People aren't aware of Kashmiri food and they don't know enough about the culture itself. How do you bring them both and also make a little bit of money in that process? So then you would host Kashmiri pop-up or a supper club. Or if you're somebody from far in like a smaller tribe in Manipur, and then you were like, oh, my food is so interesting, people don't eat it. So then you would do it. So I think that's one way to look at it. Second is another great way of making people, like welcoming people, is not just supper club, but also sending food to people. With the modern tech like Porter and Uber, you can easily send food to people. So now, because you don't want to clean so many bartan, you will just send the food to people. Still, in a way, becomes a conversation opener, and to be able to understand food. How, with this, hopefully, will make people see each other's through the food. That it's and it's completely fine to say if you eat meat. Or if you eat veg and then saying no to it, saying, oh, I don't, because I don't prescribe to a meat eater or a veg eater or vegan or whatever is your thing. So that's completely okay. So instead of shoving things down their throat, a good would be to just share the food. Open it up, open your doors and windows, let people see, talk about food as much as possible. I think COVID did that to people a lot, that they started talking about their food, making random shit, random stuff that they started making in the kitchen, which became so popular. So many people now have become superstars because of random Instagram account. One day they create like खाना खिलाते हैं लोगों को, बताते हैं कि मेरे यहाँ बनाना walnut cake अच्छा बनता है. So does that help?
Little bit. But it still does reach a very specific kind of audience, these things.
You can only
That is
reach through smaller space. You can't really change in like one go. That everybody suddenly thinking that everybody suddenly will become benevolent and you are negating the basic human behavior. Give them free food. Free food में सब आ जाता है. Think of it as langar. Yes. Anybody else have questions? People are raising their hand and they're like, ये क्या तरीका है? I'm assuming there is no question. That's completely fine. Over to you. Thank you very much. I gave you whatever time that is left. Back to you. And whatever you want to do. Thank you.
Thank you for the talk. It was great having you share your views to us. Siddhant has an announcement to make, so everybody stay back for 5 minutes.
Hello, hello. Am I audible? Sorry, sir. Sorry. Uh, all right. I'll not. Oh, sorry. I'll not take much of your time. Just give me 2 minutes. Uh, hi everybody. My name is Sadaf Hussain. I am a member of the documentation team, and I promise you, you do not want to miss this. Tomorrow, the documentation team is going to be shooting right here for the Mazika final film, and for that, we need the entire CFP batch to show up. Why? It is only because it's more of a party than it is a shoot. We're going to be blaring music through the wonderful sound speaker. There's going to be lights, and your friends are going to be dancing on stage, and we want you also to dance along with us. So if you're interested in dancing, singing, and just making something generational, please show up. Thank you so much. We'll see you tomorrow at 2:30 p.m. Thank you.